r/ask Reddit. What's something that's socially acceptable in your country, but isn't anywhere else? Tipping is very socially unacceptable in Japan. It's considered insulting, as if you are saying your job is so pathetic I pity you. Have some money from someone with a real job. Whoa, I wish we had this mentality in North America. I read that it can also be taken as an insult to the restaurant, by implying that the restaurant is too stingy to pay their employees properly and that if the waiter takes the money then they're agreeing with this sentiment. Turning right on red. So glad we got this right. Well, only after coming to a complete stop first. In Hungarian weddings, around midnight of an all-night party the bride and groom will disappear, and then reappear some time later with the bride having changed from her white dress into a red one. Then the wedding MC will basically announce that there is one less girl in the world and one more woman. And essentially now that she's no longer a girl she can dance with anyone. For money. Then the wedding guests basically put money in a hat to have a brief time to dance with the bride. And if you put a lot of money in you can even request a song. At traditional, huge weddings this would even go on so long that groomsmen would show up wearing drag to pretend to be the bride and give the poor woman a break. Mind. Even though it's perfectly normal to live with your boyfriend/girlfriend in Hungary these days before getting married, and it would be weird to not have sex beforehand, I can't say I have ever heard of other modern cultures celebrating the consummation of the wedding short of nomadic tribes or similar. In Orthodox Jewish weddings, there's a tradition that directly after the ceremony, like between the ceremony and the reception, the bride and groom go into a special room for yichud, togetherness behind closed doors between a man and a woman alone, which is forbidden unless you're married. The assumption is that they bang, which, traditionally and among practicing Orthodox people, would be the first time that happens, and then they just come out and dance with their friend's family, with everyone holding the knowledge that ostensibly they just ducked. Nah, even amongst practicing Orthodox couples, people don't actually bang, 9 times out of 10 at least, although that's what the opportunity is for. You're in there for a short time, both of you fasted all day, and usually there is food in there so you can gorge before continuing the festivities. If you can't afford medical care, you just die. USA. Careful now, don't strain anything. And then funerals cost 10 grand. I died because I couldn't afford to live and now I can't afford to die. Crossing state lines to purchase fireworks that are illegal in Ohio, then shooting them off in your driveway. PA is a godsend for us in NY. If you're far enough upstate it's all about New Hampshire though. In the UK, if a waitress or waiter drops a plate, or smashes a glass in a restaurant, at least one person, and often many people, in the restaurant will shout "Wee-I-I-I-I-I-I-I," in effect, deliberately highlighting their mistake with a loud, sarcastic jeer. It's really not clear why this happens, but just does, and I don't think it would be acceptable in most other countries. I worked in a department store and was stacking crockery near the canteen. It was lunchtime and about 40 workmen from a local building site were queued up for food. I dropped a plate and an enormous cheer went up at football match volume. It was ducking awesome. The absurdity of it made it far less embarrassing than if it had been tutting or silence. That's why we do it. I was at a rave in a squatted residential home. It was like a big hotel. My mate broke a shelf and we all shouted woo-ah, as if he had done a really bad thing. For about a minute, when we stopped you could hear hundreds of people joining in from all over the building. Woo-ah. Sniffing incessantly is acceptable in Japan, whereas nose blowing in public is considered disgusting. Can confirm. I worked briefly for a Japanese company. Had a colleague who would make the most disgusting sniffling noises all day long. Never used a ducking tissue. In Brazil it is also considered disgusting to blow your nose in public, but it doesn't mean we sniff all day. We just go to a private place to do it, like the toilet to do it. I'm living in France now, and in the winter it's like a symphony of people blowing their noses in class. When eating a meal, yelling out "you're invited" to anyone you know who passes by you. Would they actually be welcome? Normally the response is good appetite. But yes, if they were serious you are expected to share your food. Not actually from this country, But a friend from South Korea said that asking someone's age is one of the first things you do when meeting them, so you know how formally to speak with them. Logically, it makes sense. But I can't imagine walking up to a woman man I've never met here, Canada, and asking how old they are. It'd be awfully rude. I used to have my hair cut by a woman who is Vietnamese. There was a new stylist at the shop, and Min, my stylist, was fretting about having been very rude to her by accident. She said she had been addressing her as someone her own age, instead of something akin to auntie. The new woman was older. I said that most women consider it a compliment to be mistaken as younger than they are. But Min felt very bad and was slinking around all apologetically. That day, TDIL, that day I learned Korean, Canadian. Here, it is poor taste to not appropriately address someone by a title like Big Sister or Auntie, while Auntie has more respect than Big Sister. Calling someone auntie instead of big sister is not great either. When I was in my mid-20s, I had Korean neighbors down the hall from me in my apartment complex. A young couple with cute little boy. He would get restless and want to walk up and down the halls with his mom at least once a day. One day, I say hello to his mom and she told her son to say hi. He bowed a little and said hi auntie, a jammer. Our jaws dropped and his mom immediately started correcting him to say big sister. Nuna is a big sister to a boy. He looked at me and continued to call me auntie, while his mom was apologizing to me for not calling me big sister. That was the day when I realized I wasn't young anymore and to accept the fact that I will be called a jammer instead of Nuna or Uni, big sister to a girl. Living with parents, even when you're the sole earner and supporting the whole family in a house bought by your own money. Because in my country and culture, parents support kids till they get a job. Then it's kids' responsibility to support parents. I'm Asian and can confirm this. Wearing a two-piece bikini with your country's flag on your ass and being considered to be patriotic. It's my patriotic duty to stare at that ass. My professor taught in Japan. He spoke of his time there a lot. Some of this might not be true as it's a second-hand story, but still, in Japan it's impolite and childish to expect to be able to tell a chef no tomato please or no onions or anything like that. If you want food without onions, you should order something that doesn't contain onions. You can pick the onions off, but people find that childish too. Even though he lived there for 7 years, he was still described as that foreigner, even by his close friends or neighbors. Assimilation into their culture is nigh impossible. They'd prefer you to conform to their idea of an American foreigner. Walk around not knowing where you're going while wearing a USA baseball cap and eating a hot dog. Also, apparently it's incredibly insulting to use your hand, the classic come hither motion. Palms facing up and waving your fingers towards yourself. That is something you'd do to a dog. You're supposed to have your palm facing the ground in Japan. Can confirm. I lived in Korea for 3 years, and once I learned the language, I found out people were saying terrible things about me everywhere I went. When I would confront them, they would be shocked that I understood them, but never apologize. In fact, some of them would be angry that I was able to understand and talk to them as if a language isn't something that you can learn. To greet any person with a kiss on the cheek. I live in Argentina and we even had a guy in our subreddit a few days ago asking if a girlfriend was cheating on him because a friend gave her a kiss in front of him. It would be awkward to greet a woman or a male friend with anything else than a kiss in the cheek here. I don't know. A kiss on each cheek is the usual way to greet women in France, not in a formal setting. Obviously, it's the norm for woman-woman and man-woman greetings, and is sometimes used for man-man greetings if the two are close friends. Whoa whoa whoa, we're talking about a kiss on the cheek. Expecting a response to alright, to be alright, and that acting as formal introductions and pleasantries for the day. Here in Brazil we do something like alright, semicolon alright, semicolon alright. Sitting in the front seat of a taxi when you're on your own is apparently weird in places outside of Australia. We do this in Canada. I would feel super rude if I sat in the back seat of a cab when it was just me. Actually, even in a group there's usually one person delegated as the front seat person. The front seat person handles the payment and makes small talk with the cab driver. This isn't normal elsewhere. In the US it'll be the equivalent of going behind the counter at a coffee shop. Like, what are you even doing? Drinking on average 6-10 cups of English breakfast tea daily. I do this in Australia. I think it's my British heritage coming through. Inviting your family, friends, co-workers, neighbors, the lady who cleans your parents' house, her family, the bus driver, that person you met 3 years ago at a Indigenous people issues seminar and his wife to a asado, BBQ, at your place and really mean it and expect everyone will show up. Chile. So the Chilean friends I made were serious about inviting me to visit and stay at their place in Santiago. I thought they were just being polite. Likely was, when you say, show up anytime, it means show up anytime. You end up thinking, man, why is Megaclyde not coming over? It's also assumed that if you invite a friend over, their friends are welcome. Here in the USA, I'm just now finding out that we're the only country that says a pledge of allegiance to their flag, and many other countries find that strange. I'm not sure if that counts or not. I never thought anything of it in school. I just listened to the person on the loudspeaker said it, and never really said it myself. I don't know if this is entirely exclusive to the English, but I only noticed it a short while ago when you want to play a game of pool, but someone is already using the table. It's quite common over here to ask if they're having more than one game. If the answer is no, you put 50p or £1 on the table to show that you'd like to play the next game. And that's what you're going to use to pay for the next match. Yet I done this a while back, and these little Turkish kids thought I was just paying for their next game of pool, and took my money to pay for it. It's never happened here before. I must know more about other cultures' pool table etiquette. We do the same thing in Canada, but you don't always have to ask if they're playing a game. Just place your money down and they can either play you for the table or let you have it. Saying sorry even if it isn't your fault. Saying sorry even though there is nothing to be sorry for. This morning at work I was waiting for a woman to fill her water bottle. She finished filling, smiled at me and said sorry. I said thanks and started to fill my bottle. When I was done, I smiled at the guy behind me and said sorry. He said sorry too. It's a line. What are we sorry about? Not finishing all the food on your plate. Doing so means you want more. Leaving a bit but not a wasteful amount indicates you're full. This applies to drink as well. Being completely asocial. I've spoken with my neighbors once or twice. I don't know their names and would not be able to select them out of a lineup. Strangers never really talk to each other unless they're in a situation specifically designed for that. It's socially acceptable to call the police landlord on your neighbors without confronting them first about the issue. They're being loud past 10 PM. Guess who's getting an anonymous noise violation fine? When I was a kid growing up in Mexico, if I was misbehaving, my mom would point at a random man and say something like, "Behave or that man will take you with him." Weirdest part about it was that most of the time the man went along with it. It always worked, but I can't see something like that being done in the States. I work installing internet in people's houses, and this happens to me with 2 out of every 3 Mexican families. The little kids will ask what I'm here for, and their mom will tell them I'm here to take them away. It's never not awkward. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.